For joining us and welcome.
Thank you.
So you brought this action. You felt that Mr. Nxasana was dismissed illegally and that payment shouldn't have happened. The court supported your view.
Indeed, and I think we first decided to bring this action because there had been a deliberate attempts by the president to try and enforce Mr. Nxasana out of office. We know from back in July 2014, the president threatened to bring an inquiry into his fitness to hold office, and therefore there was an attempt by the president to remove him because it was seen that he might act against the president. And the ultimate golden handshake that he received of 17.3 million rands was not provided for in the law, and we knew instinctively that it was an unlawful offer, that it was in effect a corrupt one, and that the settlement agreement needed to be set aside.
All right, so let's talk about this corrupt offer, which means, as was intimated by Mr. Nxasana himself, that this might have been a bribe to get you out of office. Mr. Nxasana took this. The judges were not very complimentary about this transaction at all. Was there a crime committed?
Well, I think the court was very careful in how it described that, and it said in the absence of oral evidence regarding how that it came to be that that agreement was reached, the court merely found that both the president and Mr. Nxasana had acted recklessly, and they both should have known that the payment was unlawful. It fell outside the scope of the National Prosecuting Authority Act and was therefore unlawful, and he was not entitled to that money.
How can a president remove an NPA head, which is his prerogative?
Well, in fact, interestingly, because CASAC made two additional requests of the court, both of which were granted, which was to strengthen the NPA Act by removing the president's discretion, firstly to extend the tenure of a national director beyond the age of 65, and secondly to curtail the power of the president to suspend a national director of public prosecutions. And what has been read in the meantime, whilst Parliament deals with that issue, is that that suspension should last no more than 6 months and should be on full pay. And we believe that those provisions will certainly help to entrench the independence of the national director.
So the president has lodged an appeal. This, I'm sure, does not surprise you. But what is the legal status then now of Shaun Abrahams and Mr. Nxasana?
Well, the president has indicated this afternoon that he will seek leave to appeal, despite bizarrely having stated in his own statement that he had not been as yet fully briefed on the judgment. So one questions the basis on which that decision is taken. But regardless of that, the effect of the judgment is that until such time as a new national director is appointed by the Deputy President, as the court ordered, Mr. Abrahams remains in office until such time as that appointment is made.
And I suppose all prosecutions that he was in charge of remain safe.
Yeah. No, the court would ordinarily make an order to that effect, and in fact they did do so explicitly today to say that despite the setting aside of Mr. Abrahams' appointment, all decisions that he took as the national director remain valid and binding.
Can he appeal that decision, or is this purely on the decision made by the president?
Well, he would be entitled to appeal. He's one of the respondents in the case, as is Mr. Nxasana and the Minister of Justice. One of the things that the court stressed in its judgment today, and really undermines Mr. Abrahams, is to say that Mr. Abrahams has sheepishly followed the president's legal arguments, not just in this case, but also in the spy tapes case. And the court said that is not the attitude of someone who's acting independently without fear, favor, or prejudice. So I think Mr. Abrahams would have a very weak case to take forward.
Do we now have case law that suggests that when a president is conflicted, that his executive powers may be curtailed insofar as that conflict exists? Indeed,
I think we do now. And the court again explained its reasoning very, very clearly, I thought, in the judgment by pointing to sections 96 and 90 of the Constitution, would provide the constitutional basis for the court to make the orders that they did today. That in terms of section 96, the president is conflicted between his personal interests as an accused facing corruption and fraud charges and his public responsibility to appoint the national director. He's therefore incapable of carrying out that function. And in terms of Section 90, that function should now be executed by the Deputy President. And I think it does set a precedent, as you say. And interestingly, we have the state capture review case in which a very similar conflict of interest issue arises. Judgment in that case is expected from the very same court, and in fact from the Judge President himself, Dunstan Mlambo, next week, in terms of whether the Chief Justice should be the appropriate person to appoint the head of a commission of inquiry into a state capture.
And I suppose, you know, when we step back a little bit and watch this whole process, it does speak a little bit. And I was hearing SABC journalists earlier on saying that, you know, civil society, people have a significant role to play. I suppose your actions speak volumes to this.
Indeed, and I think it shows the vibrancy of our democracy, that civil society organizations are very active. We take constitutional issues seriously, and we're serious about strengthening and entrenching our democracy. And at the heart of it, and at the heart of the criminal justice system, lies an independent and strong NPA. And that's what we're seeking to put in place, and that I think the court has attested to today by emphasizing the importance of a strong NPA, and their judgment, I think, goes a long way to assist us in fulfilling that goal.
All right, Lawson Naidoo, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for giving us your thoughts and your views on this decision that's gone your way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, there was a very emotional day in the Life Esidimeni inquiry today, and in fact we saw a former Deputy Constitutional Court judge reduced to tears. Watch after this.